Hi, it's Paul, and I want to welcome you to Finding the Cause and Solution for Your Conflict. Have you ever wondered, why is this happening? Or maybe, why is this happening to me, if you make it as something that's your fault or is personally against you? Let me give you an answer to that. I don't have a step-by-step process where you can check off the things and it'll lead you through a flowchart to an answer, but I am going to give you the top 10 causes for conflict and what the quick solution is. Now, if you want to find out the details on these, you should get involved in taking my entire course, Conflict Resolution for Everybody, because in those hours of coursework, we'll explain everything in great detail so that you can put it to work. But I'm going to give you enough in the next few minutes that you'll have the 10 major causes and solutions for conflict. Here we go. The top 10 causes. These are the most common causes. Now, there's lots of variations on these, but you'll recognize them as being a root cause. I want you to understand the underlying psychology. I don't really get into explaining they do this and then you do that. I want to get underneath and give you frameworks and solutions that rely on the underlying psychology. So we'll be doing that during the next few minutes. When I do that, that enables you to adapt the solution to any particular situation instead of being locked into a set of circumstances. And I'm going to encourage you to put this to use immediately because there's actionable information here. Here's the first cause. Number one is personality differences. One person differing from another based simply on how he or she feels about that person. And this is real. There are different types of people in the world, and without proper training and proper encouragement, these things can spin out of control. Research has shown that there's 4 core types of personalities: the controller, promoter, analyzer, and supporter. And in this lesson, I'm not going to go into what the details are about the differences. We have a lesson that's completely about this and how to use these to our advantages. But let's just say that on the diagonals between the analyzer and promoter and the controller and the supporter are natural lines of conflict because they're just different people. So sometimes that's what's going on. Now, the solution is to train everybody to recognize the personality types along with their inherent strengths and weaknesses so that they can understand each other. And one of the keys to this is to work on the strengths instead of the weaknesses. It's so easy to say you should change, but the reality is most people aren't going to change very much. So what are their strengths and how can we use those to benefit everybody? Number 2 is sensitivity and hurt. A person feels attacked by perceived criticism or other interpersonal directness. So somebody says something and somebody takes offense at it. Now, I always say you can't offend me because I choose not to take offense. But most people aren't like that. If offense is given, they'll take it. And even if it's not given it, sometimes they find it. So the solution is this. Even negative behaviors have a positive intention. This is one of my core teachings. As you go through my course, you'll find this out, that whenever somebody's doing something that seems to be negative, there's really a good reason behind it. We just have to find out what it is. The second solution is to use active listening and questioning techniques to understand the root cause of the problem. What are they really saying and what do they really mean by that? And then adjust your communication to match the needs of the other person, particularly if you're the one giving the offense. Cause number 3 is differences in perceptions, and this results from the idea that 2 people can see the same event in very different ways. The exact same thing can happen, and 2 people can take away completely different meanings from it. And in my course, we go into the details about how the personal perspective works, but it's basically comprised of values, beliefs, and memories. These 3 things interact to create the filters that somebody uses to attach meanings to events. So when an event occurs, people will attach a meaning to it, which may or may not be the meaning that the other person attaches to it, and so we can have conflict from this. The solution is to understand the personal perspective and how to decode the other party's model of the world. Number 4, differences over facts. Now, a fact is a piece of data that can be quantified or an event that can be documented. An example of a fact is how many square feet of production we need to have this afternoon in order to meet our goal. And there could be a difference based on how this is calculated, so we've got a conflict. However, a statement like "you're insensitive to my feelings" can't be documented or quantified, so it's just a difference in perception as to whether they're being insensitive or not. The solution? Distinguish between facts and perceptions and have a neutral third party or authority source arbitrate the dispute. Number 5, differences over goals and priorities. What should be done first? What should be done next? An argument about whether a bank should focus more resources on international banking or community banking is a disagreement over goals. And the solution to this is pretty straightforward. Management must set, communicate, and enforce the values, priorities of the organization. And you'll learn how to do this in my course. It's not that difficult to do, but it's absolutely key. If you look at the value statements of most corporations, they'll list 5, 6, 7, 10 things, but they don't tell what order they're in. If you tell what order they're in, it reduces the amount of conflict in your organization dramatically. Number 6, difference over methods. 2 sides have a similar goal, but they disagree on how to get there. So the solution is to have a neutral third party or expert arbitrate the dispute. Now, there's some other ways to do it, but the simple one is to get somebody to rule on this and make a decision. Number 7, competition for scarce resources. Two managers argue over who has the greater need for an assistant, whose budget should be increased more, or how to allocate recently purchased computers. Management must set and communicate the values priorities for the organization once again. If I could teach one thing to a leader that will reduce the conflict in their organization, this is it. Because then people don't have to argue about it. They know what's most important. As a leader, you can do this, and you'll watch the results take place immediately. Number 8, competition for supremacy. And this is a personality thing sometimes. One person seeks to outdo or outshine another person. Depending on personalities, this can be very subtle or it can be very much in your face. When we learn about the types of difficult people and the personalities, you'll see that there are certain strategies that people use to get the things they want, and one of those is competition for supremacy, where they always have to win. They always have to be number one. And when you've got 2 or more people who've got this characteristic, you can certainly have conflict. So the solution: understand how strategies work and why people use them. Management sets and enforces values priorities so we don't have to have the argument. But the key thing here is to understand how people use strategies to get what they want, and then how we can break those strategies if they're not working well, or how we can give them the result they want in a better way other than having conflict. You'll learn all of this in the course. Number 9, misunderstandings. And this is simply a communication breakdown. Sometimes a lot of what looks like conflict is actually a communication breakdown. I recently was involved in a situation where when we brought all the parties together into the room, we found out that they were all in agreement. They were just using different words to say it. It only took me about 2 hours to find that out. Now, they had paid me for 8, and they said, well, is that all you're going to do? Yeah, that's all I'm going to do. If you want me to sit here for another 6 hours, we can, but the problem is solved because we found out that they really were in agreement. They just didn't know it. So if it's not communication, if it's not attended with care, is as likely to fail as succeed. Research shows that only about 60% of communication succeeds, and only about 40% if you're using email. A listener's incorrect inferences about a speaker's intent can create conflict. So the solution is to ask the million-dollar question. What else could this mean? Because when we attach a meaning to it, there's lots of other possible meanings, and by using this question, we can discover what some of them are and maybe get past the conflict into what the person really meant. And the last one, number 10, is unfulfilled expectations. Somebody was expecting something to happen and reality did not meet this expectations. Happens all the time with children. They thought that this was going to happen and it didn't, and so we've got a tantrum or we've got conflict, we've got problems coming up. Also happens with adults in an organizational setting. So the solution: use active listening and questioning techniques to set and clarify expectations so that everybody really understands what's going to happen. That way, when the reality comes along, it meets the expectations. So there you have the top 10 causes and solutions for conflict. Are there more? Yeah, but these are the 10 big ones. Most others are variations on these. A good skill set will allow you to work with any conflict because you'll be able to overlay the skills onto these 10 causes. That's it for this lesson. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.